The grand estate of Ravencrest Manor stood like a fortress against the stormy night, its ancient stones weathered by centuries of secrets. Lady Victoria Ashworth had inherited the sprawling property from her eccentric aunt just 6 months ago, along with its most prized possession, the legendary Crimson Crown jewels, said to be worth over £50 million. Security guard Marcus Thompson adjusted his flashlight as he made his routine patrol through the East Wing. At 62, Marcus had been protecting valuable estates for over 30 years, and his sharp eyes missed nothing. The rain hammered against the tall windows as he walked the marble corridors, his footsteps echoing in the silence. Something was different tonight. Marcus paused near the portrait gallery, his instincts tingling. A faint sound drifted from the direction of the jewelry vault, a soft clicking that shouldn't be there at this hour. Lady Victoria was supposed to be in London attending a charity gala, and the staff had been dismissed early due to the storm. Marcus switched off his flashlight and moved carefully toward the sound. The manor's security system was state-of-the-art, with motion sensors and cameras throughout. Yet somehow, someone had managed to breach the vault area without triggering any alarms. His heart rate quickened as he approached the heavy oak door that led to the secure wing. Through the crack beneath the door, he could see a thin beam of light moving back and forth. Someone was definitely inside the vault room. Marcus reached for his radio to call the police, but then hesitated. What if this was some kind of test? Lady Victoria had been acting strangely lately, asking odd questions about the security protocols and the staff schedules. The clicking sound stopped suddenly. Marcus held his breath, pressing himself against the wall. Footsteps approached the door from the other side, slow, deliberate, trying to be silent. He gripped his flashlight tighter, ready to use it as a weapon if necessary. The door handle turned slowly. Marcus watched in frozen silence as a figure emerged from the vault room, dressed entirely in black with a small backpack. The person moved with practiced stealth, clearly familiar with the layout of the manor. In the dim light, Marcus could see something glinting in the intruder's gloved hand. As the figure turned toward the main corridor, Marcus caught a glimpse of a familiar profile. His blood ran cold. This wasn't some random burglar who had broken into Ravencrest Manor. This was someone who had legitimate access to the building, someone who knew exactly where the most valuable items were kept. The figure paused suddenly, as if sensing Marcus's presence. For a heart-stopping moment, they stood motionless in the shadows, hunter and hunted frozen in a deadly game of cat and mouse. Marcus realized he was witnessing something that could change everything he thought he knew about the people he trusted. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the corridor for a split second. In that brief moment of clarity, Marcus saw exactly who was standing before him with the stolen jewels clutched in their hands. The revelation hit him like a physical blow, and he struggled to process what his eyes were telling him. The storm outside seemed to mirror the chaos in Marcus's mind as he faced a decision that would alter the course of many lives. Should he confront the thief immediately, or follow them to discover the full extent of this betrayal? The weight of what he had witnessed pressed down on him as the figure began to move again, unaware that their carefully planned crime had been observed by the one person who could expose everything. Marcus made his choice in that split second. Rather than confronting the thief immediately, he decided to follow and gather more evidence. He needed to understand the full scope of what was happening before taking action. His 30 years of experience told him that hasty decisions often led to criminals escaping justice. The figure moved confidently through the manor's winding corridors. Avoiding the main security cameras with suspicious ease, Marcus followed at a safe distance, using his intimate knowledge of the building's layout to stay hidden. The thief seemed to know exactly which floorboards creaked and which shadows provided the best cover. They descended the servants' staircase toward the kitchen wing, a route that would avoid most of the electronic surveillance. Marcus's mind raced with questions. How did this person know so much about the security system? The vault's combination was known only to Lady Victoria, her lawyer, and the head of security. The cameras in that area required a special access code to disable. As they reached the ground floor, the thief paused at a window near the rear entrance. Marcus watched from behind a massive stone pillar, as the figure carefully opened the window and placed the stolen items in a waterproof bag. With practiced movements, they lowered the bag outside using a rope, clearly having planned this operation down to the smallest detail. Instead of following the bag outside, The thief closed the window and began retracing their steps back through the manor. Marcus was puzzled. Why wasn't the criminal escaping? Why return to the scene of the crime? Unless they planned to return to wherever they were supposed to be, creating a perfect alibi. The realization struck Marcus like lightning. This wasn't just theft. It was an inside job orchestrated by someone who needed to maintain their cover. Someone who would be expected to be in the manor tonight, despite what he had been told about everyone being away. Marcus followed the figure back up the stairs, his heart pounding with each step. The thief moved with renewed urgency now, as if working against a deadline. They headed toward the guest wing of the manor, an area Marcus rarely patrolled due to its separate security system. As they approached a particular door, the figure stopped and listened carefully. Marcus pressed himself against the wall, hardly daring to breathe. The thief produced a key and quietly unlocked the door, slipping inside what Marcus knew to be one of the luxury guest suites. For several minutes, Marcus heard nothing but the storm raging outside. Then faint sounds emerged from the room, running water, movement, the soft thud of objects being placed down. The thief was changing clothes, washing up, destroying evidence of their criminal activity. Marcus faced another crucial decision. Should he wait for them to emerge and confront them then? Should he call the police immediately? Or should he try to secure the stolen jewels first? He knew the bag was hanging outside the kitchen window, vulnerable to the storm and potentially to accomplices. The bathroom sounds stopped. Marcus heard footsteps moving around the room, then the distinctive sound of a phone being dialed. His blood chilled as he realized the thief was making a call, probably to coordinate the next phase of their plan. A voice drifted through the door, muffled but clearly audible. Marcus strained to listen, catching fragments of conversation that made his worst fears seem insignificant compared to the reality he was uncovering. Phase 1, complete. The items are secured. Yes, exactly as we discussed. Tomorrow's meeting will proceed as planned. No one suspects anything. Marcus realized he had stumbled onto something much larger than a simple jewelry theft. This was part of a complex scheme involving multiple people, and tomorrow's events would somehow be connected to tonight's crime. He needed to act fast, but he also needed to be smart about it. The phone call ended, and Marcus heard movement toward the door. He quickly retreated to a nearby alcove, his mind racing with the implications of what he had discovered. The person who emerged from that room would soon realize that their perfect crime had a witness, and Marcus knew his life might depend on how carefully he handled the next few minutes. The door opened slowly, and Marcus held his breath as a figure stepped into the corridor. To his absolute shock, it was Elena Hartwell, Lady Victoria's trusted personal secretary and closest confidant. Elena had been with the Ashworth family for over 8 years, managing everything from social calendars to financial investments. She was the last person anyone would suspect of criminal activity. Elena had changed from her black thief outfit into an elegant nightgown and robe, her hair arranged as if she had been sleeping. She moved quietly down the corridor toward the main guest staircase, playing the part of someone awakened by the storm and unable to sleep. Marcus watched in disbelief as this woman he had known and worked alongside for years transformed before his eyes into a completely different person. Elena had always seemed so proper, so devoted to Lady Victoria's interests. Yet she had just executed a professional heist with the skill of a career criminal. As Elena disappeared around the corner, Marcus made his move. He needed to secure the stolen jewels before they were collected by whoever Elena had called. Moving swiftly but quietly, he made his way back to the kitchen area, his mind spinning with questions about who else might be involved in this conspiracy. The rear window was exactly as Elena had left it, with the rope still hanging outside. Marcus carefully pulled up the waterproof bag, his hands shaking slightly as he realized he was holding millions of pounds worth of stolen artifacts. Inside the bag, he found the legendary Crimson Crown jewels, a stunning ruby necklace, matching earrings, and an ornate tiara that had belonged to the Ashworth family for generations. But there was something else in the bag that made Marcus's blood freeze. Along with the jewels was a set of documents, legal papers that appeared to be insurance policies and ownership certificates. Marcus quickly scanned the papers by flashlight and discovered something that changed everything he thought he knew about this crime. The documents showed that Lady Victoria had recently taken out massive insurance policies on the jewelry, far exceeding their actual value. There were also papers indicating significant financial troubles, debts, failed investments, and legal judgments that painted a picture of someone desperate for money. Marcus realized he might be looking at an insurance fraud scheme rather than a simple theft. But if that was true, why was Elena the one stealing the jewels? Was Lady Victoria in on the plan, or was Elena acting independently? The phone conversation he had overheard suggested there were other people involved. But who were they and what was their role? A new sound made Marcus freeze, car doors slamming outside in the storm. He quickly hid the bag of jewels and documents in a kitchen cabinet before moving to a window where he could observe the driveway. Through the rain, he could see two figures approaching the manor's front entrance. The front door opened and Marcus heard familiar voices. Lady Victoria had returned from London unexpectedly, and she wasn't alone. With her was James Crawford, the family's lawyer and financial advisor. They were talking in hushed, urgent tones as they moved through the entrance hall. "Are you certain about the timing?" James was asking. "If anything goes wrong, everything is arranged," Lady Victoria replied. "The insurance investigators will find exactly what they expect to find. By tomorrow afternoon, this will all be over." Marcus felt like he was drowning in revelations. Lady Victoria was definitely involved in the scheme, and James Crawford, a man he had respected for his integrity, was apparently helping to orchestrate the fraud. But where did this leave Elena? Was she a willing participant or somehow being manipulated? As the voices moved deeper into the manor, Marcus heard Elena's footsteps on the main staircase. She was heading down to meet them, and Marcus realized he was about to witness a gathering of conspirators. He needed to position himself where he could observe their meeting without being detected. The three figures converged in Lady Victoria's private study, a room Marcus knew well from his security rounds. He managed to position himself in an adjacent corridor, where he could hear their conversation through the partially open door. "Did everything go according to plan?" Lady Victoria asked Elena. "Perfectly," Elena replied. "The items are secured exactly as we discussed. The security footage has been altered to show nothing unusual, and there's no trace of entry into the vault." James shuffled papers nervously. "The insurance company will conduct their investigation tomorrow. We need to make sure our stories align perfectly. Victoria, you were at the charity gala with dozens of witnesses. Elena, you were here but sleeping in the guest wing due to the storm." Marcus was on his normal patrol route. Marcus's heart stopped. They had planned this down to his own movements, using his regular patrol schedule as part of their alibi. But they had made one crucial mistake. They hadn't counted on Marcus deviating from his routine tonight. Marcus listened in growing horror as the three conspirators discussed their plan in detail. The scheme was far more elaborate than he had initially realized, involving forged documentation, bribed officials, and a network of accomplices that extended far beyond Ravencrest Manor. "The insurance payout will be £15 million, James explained, spreading documents across Lady Victoria's desk. "Enough to cover all your debts and leave substantial funds for our retirement plans. The beauty of this scheme is that everyone will believe the jewels were stolen by professional thieves who have vanished without a trace," Elena added. "I've already prepared the false security reports showing a sophisticated break-in. The investigators will find evidence of lockpicking, disabled alarms, and professional tools. Everything points to an international jewelry theft ring that's been operating across Europe." Lady Victoria paced nervously around the room. "What about Marcus? He's been acting suspicious lately, asking questions about the security protocols. What if he notices something?" "Marcus is a simple man," James replied dismissively. "He follows his routine exactly, checks his predetermined areas, and reports anything unusual. Since we've made sure nothing appears unusual, he'll have nothing to report. Besides, he's completely loyal to you, Victoria. He would never suspect you of wrongdoing." Marcus felt a surge of anger at being dismissed so easily, but he forced himself to remain calm and continue listening. He needed to hear their entire plan before deciding how to act. Elena opened a briefcase and began removing items that made Marcus's blood run cold. Inside were tools clearly designed to make it appear that professional thieves had broken into the manor. Lockpicks, glass cutters, and even samples of DNA evidence from unknown sources that could confuse forensic investigators. "Phase 2 begins at dawn," Elena explained. "I'll plant this evidence throughout the manor, creating a clear trail that investigators can follow. The timeline will show that the thieves entered during Marcus's break between patrols, executed the heist with military precision, and escaped before anyone could respond. James consulted his watch. The insurance investigators arrive at 10 a.m. The police will be called at 8 a.m. when you discover the theft, Victoria. Elena will be the distraught secretary who tried to stop the thieves but was overcome by their superior numbers. What about the actual jewels? Lady Victoria asked nervously. Elena smiled coldly. They're safely hidden where no one will ever find them. After the insurance money is paid and the investigation closes, we'll gradually sell them through private collectors in other countries. The profit from the actual sales will be pure, bonus on top of the insurance fraud. Marcus realized he was the only person who knew where the real jewels were, currently located, hidden in the kitchen cabinet, where he had placed them. But the conspirators didn't know their carefully planned crime had already been discovered and disrupted. A new voice suddenly joined the conversation, making Marcus's heart skip a beat. I hope you haven't forgotten about our agreement. Marcus peered through the crack in the door and saw a fourth person entering the study, Detective Inspector Sarah Mitchell from the local police force. The corrupt officer who would be investigating the crime was apparently part of the conspiracy from the beginning. Of course not, Sarah, Lady Victoria replied. Your share is exactly as we discussed. £2 million for ensuring the investigation reaches the correct conclusions. Detective Mitchell sat down heavily in a leather chair. I've already prepared my preliminary reports. The evidence will clearly point to the European theft ring that's been my department's primary suspect for months. We've been building a case against them anyway, so this will fit perfectly into their pattern of crimes. Marcus felt sick as he realized how deep this conspiracy went. A police detective, a respected lawyer, a trusted secretary, and Lady Victoria herself, all working together to commit fraud on a massive scale. How many other crimes had this group committed? How many innocent people had been blamed for their schemes? Elena checked her watch. We should all get some rest. Tomorrow will be a very long day, and we need to perform our roles perfectly. Any mistakes could unravel everything we've worked for. As the group began to disperse, Marcus faced the most important decision of his life. He had evidence that could expose the entire conspiracy, but he was up against powerful people with resources and connections he couldn't match. If he acted rashly, they might destroy the evidence and disappear, leaving him unable to prove anything. But Marcus also knew that if he did nothing, innocent people would be blamed for crimes they didn't commit, and these criminals would profit from their deception. His sense of justice warred with his instinct for self-preservation as he watched the conspirators prepare to execute their elaborate fraud. Detective Mitchell paused at the door. Remember, after tomorrow we can never meet like this again. Once the investigation is officially closed, we'll maintain our normal relationships until it's safe to relocate. Helena, make sure you destroy any remaining evidence that could connect us to this operation. Marcus realized he had very little time to act. Once Elena destroyed the evidence and the fake investigation began, it would be nearly impossible to prove what really happened. He needed to make his move soon, but he also needed to be smart about it. These people had proven they were willing to commit serious crimes, and they wouldn't hesitate to silence anyone who threatened their plans. Marcus waited until the conspirators had dispersed before making his move. His hands trembled as he retrieved his personal cell phone, realizing that he couldn't trust anyone in the local police force now that Detective Mitchell was involved. He needed to contact someone outside their sphere of influence. He remembered his nephew David, who worked for the National Crime Agency in London. David had always told Marcus to call if he ever encountered anything suspicious during his security work. This certainly qualified as suspicious, but Marcus knew he needed more than just his word against these powerful criminals. Moving carefully through the manor, Marcus began documenting everything he could. He used his phone to photograph the false evidence Elena had prepared, the insurance documents he had found with the jewels, and the rope still hanging from the kitchen window. Each photo could be crucial in proving the conspiracy. As dawn approached, Marcus made a difficult decision. He would have to let the criminals begin their plan while secretly gathering evidence to expose them. It was risky, but it was the only way to catch them in the act and ensure they couldn't escape justice. At exactly 6 a.m., Marcus called his nephew David from his personal phone. David, I need your help with something serious. There's going to be a major insurance fraud reported in my area today, but the local police are involved in the conspiracy. David's voice was immediately alert. Uncle Marcus, what are you talking about? Are you safe? Marcus quickly explained what he had witnessed, speaking in whispers from his security office. I have photos of evidence and I know where the real stolen jewels are hidden, but they're planning to frame innocent people and they have a detective helping them. This is huge, Uncle Marcus. I'm sending a team immediately, but you need to be very careful. If these people realize you know what's happening, you could be in serious danger. While Marcus waited for help to arrive, he watched Elena begin planting the false evidence throughout the manor. She worked with professional efficiency, creating a convincing crime scene that would fool most investigators. Watching her work, Marcus realized she had probably done this before. At 8 a.m., Lady Victoria made her performance debut. Her scream of horror echoed through the manor as she discovered the theft of her precious jewels. Marcus had to admire her acting skills. She seemed genuinely distraught as she called the police to report the crime. Detective Mitchell arrived within minutes, far too quickly for a normal police response. She immediately began interviewing Lady Victoria, asking questions that were clearly designed to support their predetermined narrative. Can you think of anyone who might have known about your security arrangements? Detective Mitchell asked, making notes that Marcus suspected were largely fictional. Only my most trusted staff, Lady Victoria replied tearfully. Elena, my secretary, and Marcus, my security guard. But they're both completely loyal. This must have been professional thieves. Marcus watched from his security office as Elena played her role perfectly, describing fictional attackers who had supposedly overwhelmed her when she tried to investigate strange noises. Her performance was so convincing that Marcus almost believed it himself. The insurance investigator arrived precisely at 10 a.m., just as James had predicted. Marcus recognized him as Thomas Bradley, supposedly an independent investigator, but his quick acceptance of the crime scene evidence suggested he might be another conspirator. Bradley examined Elena's planted evidence with great interest, nodding approvingly at the professional nature of the theft. This has all the hallmarks of the European ring we've been tracking, he announced. The technique, the timing, the precision, it's definitely their work. Marcus felt sick watching how easily the investigation was being manipulated. If he hadn't witnessed the truth firsthand, he would have believed their story completely. These criminals were not amateurs. They had perfected their system through practice. His phone buzzed with a text from David. Team is 30 minutes away. Stay safe and keep documenting everything. As the morning progressed, Marcus watched the fake investigation unfold exactly as the conspirators had planned. Detective Mitchell interviewed him as part of the routine questioning, and he played his role as the unknowing security guard while secretly recording their conversation. Did you notice anything unusual during your patrol last night, Marcus? Detective Mitchell asked, her eyes studying his face carefully. Nothing at all, Marcus replied truthfully. Everything seemed normal until Lady Victoria discovered the theft this morning. Detective Mitchell seemed satisfied with his response, but Marcus noticed Elena watching him more carefully than before. Had she begun to suspect that something was wrong? James Crawford arrived in his role as the family lawyer, expressing shock and concern about the theft. His performance was particularly galling to Marcus, who had always respected the man's supposed integrity. This is a terrible tragedy for the family, James declared to the insurance investigator. These jewels were irreplaceable heirlooms with centuries of history. I hope your company will process the claim quickly so Lady Victoria can begin to recover from this trauma. As the fraudulent investigation continued, Marcus realized he was watching a masterclass in criminal deception. Every detail had been planned and rehearsed, every question anticipated and answered. If not for his accidental discovery of Elena in the vault, this crime would have succeeded perfectly. But Marcus also noticed something the conspirators hadn't anticipated: stress fractures in their performance. Elena kept glancing toward the kitchen area, where she believed the jewels were hidden. Detective Mitchell was being too helpful, too quick to accept evidence without proper scrutiny. James was showing subtle signs of nervousness despite his outward confidence. Marcus knew that help was coming, but he also knew that the next few minutes would be the most dangerous of his life. If any of the conspirators realized he knew the truth, they would have to silence him to protect their scheme. Marcus's worst fears materialized when Elena made an excuse to check the kitchen area. He watched through the security monitors as she went directly to the cabinet, where he had hidden the stolen jewels. Her face went white when she discovered the bag was missing. Elena immediately signaled to Detective Mitchell, who made an excuse to step outside and make a phone call. Marcus realized they were communicating about the missing evidence, and it wouldn't take them long to figure out that someone had interfered with their plan. Within minutes, Lady Victoria received an urgent phone call that required her to speak privately with James and Elena. Marcus watched them gather in the study, their body language tense and suspicious. He knew they were discussing what to do about the missing jewels. Detective Mitchell returned and began asking new questions, probing for any signs that someone might have discovered their scheme. Her casual demeanor had been replaced by the sharp focus of a predator sensing danger. "Marcus, I need to ask you some follow-up questions," Detective Mitchell said, approaching his security office. "There are some inconsistencies in the timeline that I need to clarify." Marcus's heart raced, but his years of experience helped him maintain his composure. "Of course, Detective. I'm happy to help however I can. You mentioned that everything seemed normal during your patrol. Can you walk me through your exact route and timing last night?" Marcus provided a carefully edited version of his activities, omitting his discovery of Elena and his deviation from the normal patrol route. But he could see suspicion growing in Detective Mitchell's eyes. Elena joined them, her usual friendly demeanor replaced by cold calculation. "Marcus, did you happen to notice if any of the kitchen windows were open this morning? I thought I felt a draft when I was preparing coffee." The question was clearly a test. Elena was checking to see if Marcus knew about the window she had used to pass the jewels outside. Marcus realized that his life might depend on his answer. "I didn't notice anything unusual," Marcus replied carefully. "But with the storm last night, it's possible a window could have been blown open." Elena and Detective Mitchell exchanged a look that chilled Marcus to the bone. He could see them calculating whether he was telling the truth or playing a dangerous game of his own. Marcus's phone buzzed with another message from his nephew. 5 minutes away. "Team ready to move." Lady Victoria appeared in the doorway, her earlier distress replaced by steel-eyed determination. "Marcus, we need to have a private conversation. There are some concerns about the security protocols that need to be addressed immediately." Marcus knew this was the moment of maximum danger. The conspirators had realized something was wrong, and they were moving to isolate him from potential witnesses. He needed to buy time until David's team arrived. "I'm in the middle of giving my statement to Detective Mitchell," Marcus replied. "Perhaps we could discuss security matters after the investigation is complete." "This can't wait," Lady Victoria insisted, her voice carrying an edge of threat. "James has discovered some serious irregularities in the security logs that need your immediate explanation." Marcus realized they were trying to separate him from the other people in the manor. Once they got him alone, they could eliminate the threat he represented and claim he had been killed by the fictional thieves. Through the window, Marcus caught sight of black vehicles approaching the manor's gates. David's team was arriving, but they needed a few more minutes to get into position. Marcus had to stall the conspirators without revealing that help was coming. "I understand your concerns," Marcus said, standing slowly from his desk. "But as the security officer, I have a responsibility to cooperate fully with the police investigation." "Detective Mitchell, do you need me to remain available for additional questions?" Detective Mitchell was caught between her role as a police officer and her position as a conspirator. In front of potential witnesses, she couldn't simply dismiss Marcus without appearing suspicious. "Yes, please remain available," she said reluctantly. "I may have more questions as the investigation develops." Elena's patience snapped. "This is ridiculous. Marcus, as Lady Victoria's employee, you're required to respond to her direct requests immediately." "Actually," a new voice interrupted from the doorway, "as a potential witness in a criminal investigation, Marcus is under the protection of the National Crime Agency." David Thompson entered the room with 2 other agents, their credentials clearly displayed. Marcus felt overwhelming relief wash over him as his nephew took control of the situation. "I'm Agent Thompson, NCA. We're here to investigate reports of insurance fraud and conspiracy involving this alleged theft." The effect on the conspirators was immediate and devastating. Lady Victoria went pale. Elena stepped backward as if struck. James began gathering papers frantically, and Detective Mitchell reached for her radio before catching herself. "There must be some mistake," Lady Victoria said, her voice shaking. "This is simply a jewelry theft. Detective Mitchell has everything under control. David smiled coldly. Detective Mitchell is currently under investigation for corruption. This entire crime scene is being treated as a fraud until proven otherwise. Elena made a sudden dash toward the door, but 2 more NCA agents were waiting in the corridor. Her attempt to escape confirmed her guilt more clearly than any confession could have. Agent Thompson, Marcus said formally, I have evidence related to this investigation, including the items that were allegedly stolen. Marcus led the team to the kitchen cabinet, where he had hidden the bag of jewels and documents. As he retrieved the evidence, the faces of the conspirators told the complete story of their defeat. The elaborate scheme that had taken months to plan and seemed perfect in every detail had been undone by a single security guard who happened to be in the wrong place at the right time. Marcus looked at the people he had once trusted and felt sad rather than triumphant. Their greed had destroyed not only their own lives, but also the lives of innocent people they had planned to frame for their crimes. The investigation that followed revealed the true scope of the conspiracy that Marcus had uncovered. The National Crime Agency's forensic team discovered that this was not the first time the group had executed such a scheme. Evidence from Elena's personal computer showed at least 6 previous insurance frauds involving different properties and artifacts across England. Detective Inspector Sarah Mitchell had been providing false police reports for years, helping to cover up crimes and direct investigations away from the real perpetrators. Her corruption had allowed dozens of criminals to escape justice while innocent people were wrongly accused and prosecuted. James Crawford's law firm had been the central coordination point for the criminal network. His position as a respected lawyer had given him access to insurance policies, estate records, and legal documents that made their frauds possible. The firm's client list read like a directory of victims who had been systematically robbed through elaborate schemes. Lady Victoria's financial situation was even worse than the documents had suggested. She owed money to dangerous people who would not have been patient with late payments. The insurance fraud had been her desperate attempt to avoid consequences that could have been fatal. Elena Hartwell turned out to be the most dangerous member of the group. Under her real name, Patricia Danes, she had a criminal record spanning 15 years in 3 countries. Her specialty was infiltrating wealthy households as a trusted employee, gathering intelligence for months before executing perfectly planned thefts. The European jewelry theft ring that they had planned to blame for the crime was completely fictional. Detective Mitchell had created false police files and fake evidence to support the existence of this imaginary criminal organization. Several innocent people had already been wrongly imprisoned. Based on her fabricated reports, Marcus found himself thrust into the spotlight as newspapers across the country picked up the story of the security guard who had single-handedly exposed a major criminal conspiracy. He declined most interview requests, preferring to let his actions speak for themselves. The legal proceedings took months to complete. Lady Victoria was sentenced to 12 years in prison for fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering. The judge noted that her position of trust and social standing made her crimes particularly serious. Elena, under her real identity as Patricia Danes, received 25 years for multiple counts of fraud, theft, and identity fraud across several jurisdictions. The international nature of her crimes meant she would likely spend the rest of her life in prison. James Crawford was disbarred and sentenced to 15 years for his role in coordinating the criminal network. His law firm was dissolved, and several of his former clients came forward with evidence of additional fraudulent activities spanning decades. Detective Inspector Sarah Mitchell faced the most serious consequences. Her corruption had perverted the course of justice in dozens of cases, leading to wrongful convictions and allowing real criminals to remain free. She was sentenced to 30 years in prison and stripped of all pension benefits. The insurance investigator, Thomas Bradley, cooperated with authorities in exchange for a reduced sentence. His testimony helped expose an entire network of corrupt investigators and adjusters who had been facilitating insurance fraud across the industry. Ravencrest Manor was sold to pay restitution to the insurance companies and other victims of the conspiracy. The Crimson Crown jewels were eventually donated to a museum, where they could be properly secured and enjoyed by the public, rather than serving as temptation for future criminals. Marcus returned to his work as a security guard, but with a new appreciation for the importance of his role. The case had taught him that crime could come from the most unexpected sources, and that vigilance was more important than ever in a world where criminals were becoming increasingly sophisticated. 6 months after the arrests, Marcus received a letter from a woman named Susan Martinez in Spain. She thanked him for exposing the conspiracy that had wrongly convicted her brother of a jewelry theft 3 years earlier. Detective Mitchell's false evidence had sent an innocent man to prison, but the investigation triggered by Marcus's discovery had finally proven his innocence. The letter reminded Marcus that his decision to act on that stormy night had consequences far beyond what he had imagined. By following his instincts and refusing to ignore what he had seen, he had not only prevented a major fraud, but also helped free innocent people from wrongful imprisonment. As Marcus walked his evening patrol through a different estate several months later, he reflected on how one night had changed so many lives. The storm that had seemed so threatening had actually brought justice and redemption. Sometimes the most important moments came disguised as routine occurrences, and the difference between right and wrong could be determined by a single person's choice to act with courage and integrity. The case of the Ravencrest Manor conspiracy became a landmark in criminal justice. Education, studied by law enforcement agencies around the world as an example of how organized criminals exploit trust and authority. But for Marcus Thompson, it remained simply a reminder that doing the right thing, no matter how difficult or dangerous, was always worth the cost. In the quiet moments of his new position, Marcus sometimes wondered what would have happened if he had chosen differently that night. The thought always reinforced his belief that ordinary people have extraordinary power to change the world, one honest decision at a time.